From the Rotten Library, the Cryptozoology folder, the article on mermaids, titled Mermaids. Mermaids are one of the most ancient myths of humanity. Everyone knows the basic template. She's a fish on top, there's a woman on top, but a fish on the bottom. Maybe a fish on top and a woman on the bottom. The classic image is that of an alluring, bare-breasted mermaid sitting on a rock, ready to disappear beneath the waves at a moment's notice. First off, let's just make three things perfectly clear. There are no mermaids. There are no mermaids. There are no mermaids. Only two kinds of people seriously claim that mermaids are real. Hoaxers and idiots. We will come back to this later. While they aren't real, mermaids are interesting. Many myths can be traced directly back to one primal source, but the general concept of the mermaid seems to have a universal quality. The earliest and best-known references to mermaids are found in Syrian and Greek myths. The Syrians and the sirens of the Odyssey are often believed to be mermaids, but there was a later tradition and not part of the original text. Homer didn't describe the sirens as having fishy bits. They were simply sea maidens whose beautiful songs lured men to their deaths. Variations on the theme can be found all over the world, throughout Europe, Asia, and Africa, and even in indigenous American mythology. There is little common ground among the different iterations, with very few details to be found. This contrasts to legendary beasts like vampires or the Yeti, in which very detailed legends have sprung around specific geographical regions. Often related cryptozoological features are lumped in with many of your basic mermaids, but many of these belong to unrelated folk traditions. For instance, there are numerous legends about the nautical shape changers, particularly in Europe and the British Isles, but most of these legends are not mermaid or even fish specific. These include Celtic legends of the Silkies, who are children who transform into seals, which are more appropriately part of the overall shape-changing framework associated with fairy traditions like the Tuatha De Danann. Then there are the water nymphs, overtly sexual fairy types who are all women, but somehow magically connected to water, usually specific bodies of water. These tales are especially common in Asia and Europe, and they usually come across as the least complicated form of male sexual fantasy. Actual mermaid stories are fascinating, and precisely for the opposite reason. Their most complicated form of male sexual fantasy associated with the mermaids as sex objects are prima facie grounds that they're missing some salient parts below the waist, and therein lies a tale, so to speak. Coupled with a total lack of non-fraudulent forensic evidence that anything remotely similar to a mermaid has ever existed, the inconsistency of the legend strongly suggests mermaids have a lot more to do with zeitgeist than zoology. That premise gained substantial ground as the Freudian implications of the mermaid became clearer and clearer with each retelling, culminating in the 1836 story of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. Unlike the Disney movie of the same name, Andersen's Mermaid is a violent fairy tale laced with a sexual subtext, as the best always are. Where the soft, tender, and Little Mermaid reaches the ripe age of 15, she falls in love with a human prince. She seeks a magical spell to grant her legs, but the price is stabbing pain with every step she takes on land. The witch who provides the spell also cuts out the mermaid's tongue with the cheerful observation, "Cleanliness is good." After enduring all this, the mermaid is jilted by her beloved prince, who opts for an authentic human princess rather than a foundling. The mermaid is offered the option of murdering her prince's bride, but prefers to commit suicide by throwing herself into the sea. Andersen's Mermaid has become a national symbol in Denmark, being depicted in a 1913 bronze sculpture by Edvard Eriksson. The statue is likely most famous for its frequent defacement and dismemberment, occasionally showing up in the news after being beheaded. The first such beheading took place on the 24th of April 1964. The crime remained a mystery until 1997, when writer Jorgen Nash confessed to severing the head and tossing it into a nearby lake. Since the first decapitation, the statue has been subject to numerous drunken copycat crimes and losing its share of arms and head over the years of being dressed into a painted-on crimson bikini top. Victorian notions of cleanliness aside, the mermaid is a densely layered collection of sexual metaphors and complexes. She's naked and continually wet, with long hair and bare breasts, but she lacks the vagina that perhaps dominates the dreams of the sex-starved sailors who encounter her. In The Little Mermaid, she trades her tongue with a vagina, but is forced to endure terrible stabbing pains when she walks bleeding from her feet, which adds a minstrel motif to an already overcrowded set of symbols. With all of this pretext going for it, it's little wonder that the 19th century imagination took the idea of the mermaid and ran with it. People wanted mermaids to be real. The most spectacular manifestation of this trend was the discovery of the Fiji mermaid by the intrepid scientist P.T. Barnum. Unfortunately, in Barnum's lands, the mermaid proved to be the exact opposite of sexy. The Fiji mermaid was supposedly the mortal remains of a genuine mermaid from the Fiji Islands in South America. Although Barnum advertised the exhibit with pictures of the traditional bare-breasted beauties, the actual Fiji mermaid looked like a refugee from a Hollywood pitch gone terribly wrong. It's Gremlins meets Piranha meets Ibera. The Fiji mermaid was probably modeled after some rare and similarly weird historic artifacts found in Japan. The pedigree of the mummified creature was attested to by one of the Barnum's cronies, posing as a professor. With the support of several additional letters of scientific authentication forged by Barnum himself, the Fiji mermaid became part of an insanely popular element of Barnum's traveling show, even after it was exposed to be glued together conglomeration of parts from several different animals. Despite its completely fraudulent origins, the Fiji mermaid provoked a not-so-hidden desire of the masses to believe in even the most outrageous claims. And then it gives the links of C, the entries in Majestic 12, the Bermuda Triangle, the Codland Fairings, numerology, palmistry, rabbit's feet, fluoridation, alien autopsies, and Iraqi WMDs, all of which the articles I'll have the pleasure of reading to you in the future. So, to continue with mermaids. Even after Barnum confessed his fraud in 1855, showings of the Fiji mermaid still sold out his traveling show and inspired long lines in his American Museum. Ironically, today there are now forgeries of the original fraud and all new frauds based on forgeries of their own original frauds. The Fiji mermaid inspired numerous imitations which would have become valuable if eccentric collector's items. The basic template has exploded into cyberspace recently with the form of an email forwards and web-based hoaxes which pop up sporadically. Any major nautical event such as the December 2004 tsunamis that wiped out hundreds of thousands of lives can sublimate into yet another batch of emails insisting that the CNN probably missed the story of the mermaid corpses washing up on every shore. The frequency of those hoaxes tells you something about the enduring psychology of myths. Outside the pages of the Weekly World News, you don't see similar hoaxes circulating regarding the mythic creatures as vampires or snipes. The persistent nature of the legend has also inspired scientists to crack explanations of the worldwide fascination with mermaids. The results of their studies are less than impressive. The best theory they have been able to muster is that the mermaid myth is based on sightings of a dugong, a sea lion-like species whose females have hooter-like mammary glands. They're not really more sea lions, they're more sea cows. But then they are the closest relative to a sea cow. Clearly, these scientists are full of shit. Perhaps they are in denial about the mermaid's resonance with their own subconscious urges. The legend of the mermaid is a weird conglomeration of sexual fantasies, Freudian taboos, innumerable water-based creation myths, and perhaps our primal genetic memory of evolving from the sea. After all, fetuses develop something resembling gills during their time in the womb. If the mind-blowing ugly dugong somehow stimulates your libido and awakens your spiritual essence, we suggest you seek help immediately. From the Rotten Library, the Cryptozoology folder, the article on mermaids, titled Mermaids. Mermaids are one of the most ancient myths of humanity. Everyone knows the basic template. She's a fish on top, there's a woman on top, but a fish on the bottom. Maybe a fish on top and a woman on the bottom. The classic image is that of an alluring, bare-breasted mermaid sitting on a rock, ready to disappear beneath the waves at a moment's notice. First off, let's just make 3 things perfectly clear. There are no mermaids. There are no mermaids. There are no mermaids. Only 2 kinds of people seriously claim that mermaids are real. Hoaxers and idiots. We will come back to this later. While they aren't real, mermaids are interesting. Many myths can be traced directly back to one primal source, but the general concept of the mermaid seems to have a universal quality. The earliest and best-known references to mermaids are found in Syrian and Greek myths. The Syrians and the sirens of the Odyssey are often believed to be mermaids, but there was a later tradition and not part of the original text. Homer didn't describe the sirens as having fishy bits. They were simply sea maidens whose beautiful songs lured men to their death.